Welcome back to another episode of Rob and Avis Ramble. We have a really special guest with us today that I've been looking forward to talking to for a while. We've been trying to set this up for a couple months and just getting our schedules to align, but they finally aligned this morning. And got Pat Stedman on the line with us here. And Pat's a guy I didn't know anything about until we found him on X, and I think he's wise beyond his years. I can put it that way. So, Pat, what do people kind of need to know about you, just as a brief introduction? You know, who are you? What are you doing?
So I'm a dating and relationship coach for men, and I've been doing this now, just coming up on 11 years in the space doing that. Student of the field, so to speak. Student of women since 2008. So I don't even know, almost coming up on 20 years on that, 18 years. And I'm a J6 political prisoner, so that's always like a little side plot to add to a little layer of intrigue about my
something I knew nothing about when I first found you on X, and I saw you you're giving out relationship advice. I'm like, well, I really like what this guy has to say, and then I kind of found out later about the J6 connection, which was surprising and just a different kind of facet and thing you've been through.
Yeah, the long and short of it basically is in 2020 when COVID came out, I started to talk a lot more. I talked about politics for years because, I got on board Trump very, very early on, late summer 2015, basically. And that was a pivot for my business, even just from the very beginning when I started it. And so I'd always talked about politics and whatnot, but during COVID, I started to be very outspoken about stuff that was going on. And yeah, I got really engaged. I have a show. I still have a show, COVID Cabal, but that year it was huge. And I was, especially after the election was stolen, I just got really, we were doing streams every day. So I was down there in J6 and got, pulled into the building. I don't want to say I got pulled in passive voice. I went in, when I saw people going in, I went in, but, it wasn't violent, but I was open that I was there. I don't think I thought worst case scenario, I'd get a citation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
$50 citation, something like that. That's how it usually is. But actually, I had an FBI raid Biden's first day in office.
at your home? Did it happen at your home?
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Wow.
Things started to get a little bit more ominous, as after January 6th, it was next 2 weeks. And on my last COVID Cabal stream of that season, it was funny. It was January 20th. Biden had just been inaugurated, and I was I didn't do anything wrong, but if you guys are gonna, because I started to hear they were starting to go after people, and I was like, "Fuck you, FBI, come get me!" And they came and got me that next morning.
And they did.
I found out later on, 3 hours into Biden's presidency, they signed my arrest warrant.
Wow, it kind of reminds me of those memes you see where it's the guy's posting something, and then it's you see the FBI agent on the other side who's reading all this stuff, is laughing about what he's posting. It's same kind of deal. Pat was like, "Fuck you, come after me." He was like, "Okay, yeah, let's do it."
I fucked around and found out. But they're real pieces of shit. So it's it was definitely an experience to go through. I went to trial. I took him to trial. They charged me with an unconstitutional felony, and I took him to trial. I lost like every other J6er. You can't win between the judges and the juries. And then, so I got sentenced to 4 years in the felony. And then the Supreme Court overturned it, but they still maxed me out on the misdemeanor. So I spent a year at Fort Dix Federal Prison.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an interesting experience for sure. Literally, when I got out, they tried to put me back in prison again. They tried to resentence me after the fact to all my misdemeanors consecutively. And even the judge, there's no precedent for this. You start to get into double jeopardy territory because, you didn't ask for this in the first sentencing. The sentence has been served, but now you're going to, after the fact, try to break it apart and have, it was, they're just extraordinarily malicious people. Um, so it was kind of interesting how like literally every day of the Biden administration, I was either under some form of like supervision or prison. Like it's crazy.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Eh,
But
eh,
you don't let it stop you. Like we kept moving forward with life. You know, we had another a child, another child during the supervision in the beginning while we were in like
this
pre-trials.
is before you went to Fort Dix.
Yeah, my daughter was born just before January 6th, like late December 2020. But my first son was born in November 22. So we're like we're not gonna let it stop us. We're not gonna. That's to me like the big thing about the situation is like you just can't. You have to always, especially as like the man, you have to maintain hope. You have to maintain a positive attitude, and you're just gonna get through it. That was always the attitude. It was like this is a good cause. This is the right thing, and just can't give up. Can't give up.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to specifically kind of ask you about, just on this kind of is where, the focus being more on like relationships and marriage and those sorts of things. Like how did you and your family navigate that whole time while you were incarcerated? I mean, did you get visitation? Like how did everybody kind of manage that? Like, and what did you kind of learn out of that?
Yeah. So I mean, my parents get like a huge amount of support, like a lot of appreciation. What was supposed to be like a part-time thing in 2020 when COVID hit, like we were going to move to Poland in spring of 2021. Our apartment was being finished, and we had an apartment in New York that we were renting, but New York was wiped out by COVID, so we were kind of like splitting time between South Jersey, where my parents are, where I'm from. My parents have a house in theirs, and then all this stuff happened, right? I don't have my passport anymore. It's one of the conditions of release, when I was on supervision. So we were stuck at my parents' house essentially. So which had a lot of beautiful elements to it, multi-generational house. I'm still there. We're going to Poland in like literally a week and a half. So
Oh wow.
this like long 5.5 or so 6-year journey is about to.
And you're moving there, as in like
Yeah,
you're going to live there. Okay.
yeah. My wife is Polish, so that's why there. But yeah, so when I went to prison, my wife, there's at least that sort of stability that she was still in my parents' house with the kids, and everybody just, they rallied. They rallied to the occasion because she was still working. She had a remote job, work from home, but she's still working. And they basically saw me almost, so every week you basically had like, you have certain like points. You have essentially like, I don't want to get this too complicated. Essentially, you have like a visitation every week. That was how it was.
Okay.
If a month had 5 weeks, you missed one. Basically, you had 4 a month. Um, Holidays were free, so that was additional. I pretty much never missed a weekend for visitation.
Yeah.
You had it full days on Saturday, Sunday, and then you'd have like a half day Monday, basically, to do it. Um, and
Was it? I don't know where Fort Dix is in relation to where you live, but I mean, logistically, was it
it's
a
in the
kind of a
center of
close
New
distance?
Jersey. It's in the center of New Jersey. It's about 40 minutes from where we live, so
Okay.
it's doable. Absolutely not
Yeah.
that big of a deal. So they like, she came basically every week. Um, she went to Poland to see her family on 2 occasions, so that was like that would be like a month gap. But I still had visitation from my parents. Sometimes friends came and saw me. I have like, we have a close group of friends, and they would come. They came about 3 or 4 times, I think, that I was in there. My sisters came at one point. Later on, towards like the last third of my time there, they changed around the visitation thing, so then it was only every other week. It just, staffing issues. They didn't want to do work. It's one of those things like this. So it's like, oh, it's the summer, so we're gonna restrict the limitation to every other week, because there's 2 sides of the prison. So they'd have like, one side would have it one week, one side would have it the other. And so basically, yeah, I saw them every week or every other week, about like an hour or 2. It's about how long it was.
Huh.
I talk to her on the phone most days, but just like a 15-minute phone call. That's all.
Or phone call something that you're able to do on the daily? I mean,
You have a certain number of minutes, but
okay.
it kind of works itself out to be you could do a call day, basically.
Yeah.
You basically have like 35 calls a month, I think, if you added it up. That's how much it was. So
Wow.
I called her most days, and yeah, that was it. We'd have that. There were illegal cell phones in there that you could use to talk. I did not, but to be candid, like I didn't use them.
Yeah.
I did it once just to show her the place. We did like
Yeah.
a time, but I didn't want to pay for that. And to be honest, like I kind of enjoyed. First off, I didn't want the risk. It's just like extra level of
Yeah.
stress. I don't want to mess up any of my release. It just wasn't that important. But I kind of like liked doing the bid clean like that. You know what I mean? Like not
Yeah.
having technology distract me. Like it was there are a lot of interesting things about that experience. Like it was like going back 30 years. There's no internet. There's no, so you actually are talking to people around you. Your mind's really present. I got a lot of really good thinking done in there. So there's a lot of like interesting positives to the experience. It was like a monk mode, guys on the internet talk about monk mode. That was legit monk
Yeah.
mode. It was like literally like lifting, writing, reading, that's eating slop, terrible food, but
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm a pretty picky eater. I don't know if I do too well on that.
I'll tell you, man, you just get used to it.
It is, yeah. I mean, you got to eat at some point, right? So I guess whatever. It is what it is.
It was about a weekend. I got transferred from the west side to the east side. I got there. I'm like, oh man, like the food's like actually not so bad here. And no one agreed with me. And I realized I had just become like because then when I got transferred to the west side again later on, I realized like, yeah, the west side food was a little bit better, as everybody else said, but I had just gotten used to like not having flavor in anything. So when I got out, I mean, I can't even explain it. Having
Yeah.
buttered eggs and raspberry jam on toast. Like I remember, you always remember your first meal out. Like it was like,
Yeah.
wow, flavor, things you take for granted.
Yeah, it's just it's amazing just the change of mindset, I'm sure. And let me ask you, it just kind of in this relationship space, we hear some guys out there, and I'll call them kind of more red pill centric guys, and I do want to get into that topic, but just as kind of maybe like a lead in, they often talk about there's no benefit to marriage, right? Like, what's the benefit to marriage? Why should men be married? And I'm just kind of wondering from your perspective, having, been incarcerated, like I'm certain you were probably in there with guys that didn't have families or, maybe that sort of thing. Like, how did that having your family there and that knowing they were out there and having the visitation, like help your mentality compared to maybe men who weren't in that situation? Was there any?
Yeah, it made it so much easier. I mean, the guys who didn't have any support were, for the most part, pretty miserable. I was like super blessed between my wife and between my parents. Like you know, if you have like a soldier on the front, like like okay, he's the one who's fighting, but for every soldier, like the support companies are actually what keep him able to fight up there. Um, Feeling like people care about you, that they want you back, that they're invested in you doing okay, it really does a lot to foster greater resilience in the face of things. Um, so no, I mean, you can see the outcomes pretty clearly, and most of the guys there did not have that dynamic with women. They had very low trust dynamics, very red pill dynamics, I guess you could say, with women. A lot of these guys, they're like inner city gangsters, right? So it's not surprising. You're dealing with people. Women were interested in them when they were high on the hog. Now they go to prison. They tend to disappear for a few years with other guys, and then close to the release date, they start getting in contact again. That was the trend. And these guys are most of them are not like bitches about it. To be honest, they're mostly like they understand the game, so to speak, and they string her along a little bit for when they're going to get out. They're going to be banging all these bitches. That's all they talk about all day long, all day long. All they talk about is how much money they're getting, all the bitches they're getting. It's just not who they're going to beat up, who they're,
Yeah.
it's like a nonstop stop tape.
Were you able to like impart in them any relationship wisdom while you were there?
Absolutely not.
No.
There, I'm not. I'm just gonna be blunt about it. They're operating at a very different level of consciousness.
Mm.
So first off, nothing that I would say to them would even be particularly applicable for their situation. Like it's one of the things I want to distinguish about I consider myself like post red pill. When I say post red pill, I don't mean that the red pill is incorrect, because it's correct in a set of circumstances. And the circumstances are low trust environments. So this is how the red pill creates this like self-fulfilling prophecy, is that tells guys women are going to act in a low trust way to you. This is how they act. So this is how you need to respond to them, low trust, right? And so then you start to date in a market of low trust people. So everything that you do precipitates more and more low trust dynamics. And so of course you get these outcomes, and it confirms to you this is how you have to behave, right? Whereas from my perspective, I mean, that's fine. I agree. This is how, immature, untrustworthy people behave. Frankly, stupid people, it's how stupid people behave. I don't want to have that kind of relationship. Relationships that are based on trust operate in different dynamics. So it's not to say that the red pill stuff doesn't exist as some sort of base layer constantly, because it's part of our biology. But like saying the red pill is the ultimate truth is saying like, you leave your jacket at a restaurant, it's going to get stolen immediately. That's just not true in a high trust society. You know what I mean? Like a really high trust society, you leave your wallet, somebody's going to, contact you about it. But these people say, yeah, anybody down the street, they just kill you if you had a chance. Like that's not true. But in a low trust environment, maybe it would be true if you literally had no morality whatsoever. And they always love to say this, like the red pill isn't a moral thing, it's a praxology. Like just shut the fuck up. Like you're talking under the premise that there is no morality. So you're saying we're not making a moral judgment, we're just ignoring the existence of morality. Well, if you ignore the existence of morality, then the red pill stops applying. In a morals dynamic, then the red pill is actually compromised by it. That's why you never focus on the moral aspects. And they frame it like the morality is a problem, whereas really good faith is what changes the nature of the dynamics altogether. So they're really, it's the funny thing is like they talk like there's like these brilliant, wise people who have figured out the matrix. Like it's really not that complicated. Like it's pretty simple stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most of them parrot it over and over again. They don't even understand the simple stuff. They just repeat it because it gives them an excuse not to participate.
Yeah. I'll tell you something that was just kind of a really like interesting observation from my end about the red pill. Like before we got on X and started this account on X, I think we're coming up on about 2 years, right? I mean, red pill wasn't something that I really had any knowledge or of, and heard of, that sort of thing. And as we got on X and started talking about these relationship things, obviously I was getting more information about it. And I do think it makes some interesting observations. And I kind of, there are elements of it and observations I see that it makes that I was like, yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. It's like, this is what we've been doing, right? This is why our relationship's been successful, this sort of things. But I think it's kind of, to your point, that a lot of this stuff is maybe just basic for people that get it, right? And it's the way I think about it is it's just information. What are you going to do with it? A lot of people are doing immoral things with it. And then I kind of like to hear your thoughts too about black pill, because some of what I hear you saying to me sounds more black pill maybe than red pill, but like the line's not always so clear.
It's not clear. It's not clear. And in my experience, most of the people who call themselves red pill are black pill. because most of the guys who accept a lot of the red pill premises, but don't like, fixate on them and don't let it, jade them emotionally, don't really don't stop talking about it. They don't, it's just not that important to them. Whereas the guys, it's like people don't usually want to call themselves black pill because black pill indicates to some extent that they're a loser. So they'll call themselves red pill. Like, no, I'm not going to like date any women, or I'm only going to use women because, that's all they're good for. Right. And
Yeah.
the red, I've taken the red pill and I understand, whatever it is. I've been around it too long, and it grows as a natural response to the decreasing trust in society. Um, and it's also, of course, a reaction to feminism, because feminism began to introduce amoral behavior on the part of women into it. So a lot of red pill is reactive to, sort of, you could say, women being opportunistic sexually, having the ability to be opportunistic sexually. So when you take that and then you take the acceleration of, social atomization from technology, especially post-COVID, that's why the red pill blew up post-COVID, because you had a whole generation of young men who have, to some extent spent more time online as well, reading about how messed up things are, or they only meet women through apps, and that's a very low trust, environment. So there started to be more and more of this dehumanization and lack of trust between the sexes. So yeah, it's kind of like a race to the bottom. Try to save as many people as I can, but
Yeah. It's a really interesting perspective about it. Yeah. I mean, it's, um, the one of the most agitating things to me about X and kind of in this red pill sphere is, I will see people make posts, and it's however many characters long the post is, and it's kind of like they make this absolutist, what I would call black pill post, and just watching men kind of pick it up and turn it into a complete worldview when there's so much more context and everything that could be expanded. But the kind of black pilled absolutist, 140 characters gets clicks. And so that's what we see a lot of people pushing. And it's just really sad to me that, they're just, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I think,
I mean, outrage gets rewarded by the algorithm. There's also something going on that's interesting, where I think a lot of this like slop doesn't even come from the country. Like a lot of it comes from like India and stuff like that. And it's not like a hating thing on Indians, because there's, I've worked with a lot of them. There's definitely some really good guys, but there is obviously like a trend in that culture that's very resentful towards women. It's kind of like the simp resentful kind of dynamic, where they really, really want women, and they feel very powerless towards them. Like I think a lot of the feelings that men in Western countries feel somewhat to women are very amplified over there. So that stuff gets put out and it gets generalized and, amplified beyond, what would be a realistic situation for a lot of men. I'll also say this, that, one of the ways I think that you heal the divide, it's not just like operating in good faith yourself. Like you have to understand what bad faith behavior looks like and create deterrence around it. Push those people away. Don't date them. Second you see it, the signals, weed them out. But a lot of it is also about like having compassion for what women are going through. And I think this like empathy is a very hard thing for guys to do. It's like they're so self-absorbed in their own pain, which is frankly very feminine of them to be. It's an indication of how effeminate Western men have become. But as if women are not struggling too. Like they tend to have this really like bizarre belief that just because a woman can go and get attention from a bunch of guys, and because she can go out and get laid, that means she's like the happiest person in the world. Like most of these women have nobody who loves them at all. They have no men. They've never experienced a man actually caring about them. And so they've defaulted to, utilitarian kind of sexual strategies in large part because, they feel like they're being used themselves. So but there's no sense that maybe these women aren't actually happy. Like I still touch grass and talk to people, talk to women. And like, if you're a single woman, like you're probably not very happy. A lot of single guys aren't happy. Well, a lot of single women aren't happy either. And it's not because they can't get dates. It's not because men don't want to sleep with them. That's not what they value. But these guys can't get laid, or, they feel whatever. So they overvalue that. You know what I mean? They project their own interest onto the woman. And, a lot of them, honestly, I just don't think I think it's a big genetic bottleneck. And I think a lot of them are not equipped to survive it. Men and women both, for that matter. I think that there's so much entitlement. There's so much like, I'm going to cut off my nose to spite my face. Like, people you want an AI sex robot? Go ahead, have it. Like, you fucking loser. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really is kind of a sad situation. And I we see it in some of the posts we make, and I get the kind of black pill guys coming in there, and black pill women too, honestly, both. Right. And it's, and I think kind of to your point, you were saying about, men and empathy, there is kind of this like undertone that like, well, men aren't supposed to have empathy. And I don't think that's true at all. I mean, men should have empathy, especially if you're going to be the leader, you need to have empathy. It's a critical skill to leading well.
Yeah. If you don't care about the people underneath you that you're supposed to be leading, what kind of leader are you? I mean, that's like a lot of these guys, like they don't really want to be leaders though. Like, I've pissed off a lot of women the last couple months because I've been talking about the authority responsibility act.
Yeah, good topic. Let's dive into that.
But a lot of men, frankly, are also absolutely, they don't really want the authority.
Yeah.
Or at least they don't want the responsibility that comes with the authority. They want a woman to do all these things for them, but they're not willing to take on more responsibilities. Okay, you want to lead, but what does leading look like to you? Like they want to be worshipped, and I can, which actually is again very feminine, to want to be worshipped. The woman is the one who's supposed to be cherished. The man takes on responsibility, he makes decisions, but he has burdens as a result of that. A lot of these guys want like women to do all these things for them, and just to like, it's total validation seeking, and they really feel like they deserve all these things. And some guys, I think, are catches, and the issue is mostly just a mindset issue, an emotional issue. But many of them are not. And they haven't. And rather than put the work into actually becoming valuable, especially in a way that women would value, let me like digress on this, because you see women today, so many women, they talk about, well, look at this, I got this degree, I got this, job, look, all these things that, I'm super, super valuable woman. She's like 35. She's got all this, like, no, you like, I'm not saying that no one should pick you. I'm not saying that, you're not worth anything, but you have valued traits and you've made decisions in your life that are not increasing your value sexually to men. Like you're fluent in sarcasm, but men don't want a woman who's sarcastic, right? But their ego is very invested in all these bad decisions that they've made, or not, let's say bad decisions, but certainly not romantically beneficial decisions. They want them to be valuable though, because their own identity has, like, a lot of their self-esteem is based on them. So for men to not value what these women have based their self-worth on creates a very major problem for them romantically. Men do the same thing though, in a lot of ways. They do the same thing. And I think part of this is actually like, it's the provisioning kind of trap, because a lot of guys think like, well, if you're making some money, then that means that women should automatically really want you. And that shows a lack of understanding about women. And also, it's sure, like, having a comfortable life is good. A woman's gonna prefer that, but it's really more like, what kind of man are you that is able to make money? Like, there's a lot of, like, in the past, I think either you were born to a certain status and you had money as a result, or you were a kind of man who was able to pull resources towards you. Whereas, today, a lot of guys, I think, you can make money doing things that maybe did not connect historically to things that women would have found attractive. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you sit around the computer all day and you trade numbers back and forth. Like, that's not sexy to a woman.
Right. It's not the doctor or the attorney or the things that, women typically 20, 30 years ago would have said, oh, that's a high value man, right? It's
Yeah. And I would say, yeah, exactly. Especially if it's like an attorney who's out there in like a trial, you know what I mean? Someone who has like presence and can speak, and rather than like maybe a paper pusher attorney, it's not fair, but women certainly, there's a perception, like, I know somebody who has like, I think women are, even though it's kind of this weird mismatch, because I think from a status perspective, physical labor jobs are not like as high status. But I do think that there's more of a visceral response that women have when you as a man have done something physical and you come back. Like, women tend to like feel like he really worked. Whereas like, oh, another 10 hours behind the computer, they're like, they don't feel that, it doesn't hit them the same way. You know what I mean?
I think, as a woman, we appreciate a man who, when he walks in the room, he commands the room.
Yes.
And in whatever way that is. So, and I think when you're talking about like the high powered attorney and things like that, like, that's what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Like, they're running the room.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. Women are attracted to presence and power. Absolutely. But yeah, I think a lot of guys, they want to be validated for the things that they have rather than who they are. It's like what you have, what you do, who you are. That's kind of like the 3 stages. And if you're being valued for what you have, is like really not that great.
It can be taken from you in an instant. I mean, something you learned, right?
Absolutely.
Like, is people are wondering if that really happens. It does, and if that is where your value has come from, it's a pretty shaky place to be.
Yeah. I mean, I lost $1 million. You know what I mean? It was a very costly experience. But who you are impacts all that. That's what a woman really wants. And so the more, and maybe you have to, like, if you do things that a certain man would do, you can maybe start to become that man, right? That the feedback goes both directions. But it is ultimately about becoming a certain type of man with a certain type of attitude. And you have to love women if you want to do well with them. At the end of the day, you have to appreciate them. You have to find beauty in them. And that's the issue, is that I think, when it comes to the red pill, a lot of that stuff, a lot of guys, like, there's so much poison laced into it. Like, I've read a lot of these red pill books, and I'm sensitive to energy, and I can feel the effect that it has. There's ways that you could say the information differently that would not impart the same kind of message, like, you can say women are hypergamous, and so, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Why should it be a bad thing? A lot of guys view it like a bad thing. Well, first off, to view it as a bad thing, that shows that you identify as a deselected male. So that's a problem. But why is it a bad thing? It makes perfect sense. Why would a woman want to be with a guy who can't compete with other men?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes both ways. I mean, men also want women for the things that they value them for. Like, why can't women also want men for the things they value them for?
Yeah. And this is a great point, Rob. I mean, one of the other things, I think that the red pill does a pretty good job at understanding women. does a terrible job at understanding men. I mean, they don't have any self-awareness about their own motivations. And you see it all the time, and I think in two main areas. One of them is the whole like I want a virgin. I want a girl who's going to be pure. Understandable, okay. But then if a woman doesn't put out immediately, she's wasting your
Right.
time. There's like a schizophrenia. And I understand the logic of the two perspectives, don't get me wrong, but they haven't internally kind of like grappled with that, the inconsistency, the sort of like Madonna whore fixation that they have constantly. Like, see guys, I just want the super, super, pure girl who's going to be very modest. And like, I work with guys, that's like really not true for the most part. I mean,
No.
you know what I mean? Like, you think you want that, maybe you like that idea in the same way that a woman just wants a nice guy who's going to treat her so well, blah, 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 treat her like a princess. She doesn't really want that. At least not entirely, right? There's aspects of the opposite sex that we want both. So, a man or a woman is going to have to express both sides of that in order to be appealing on their own. Otherwise, you're going to fragment it. You're going to look for one woman who does one thing and one woman who does another, right? You're going to marry a woman who you are not really sexually into, and you're going to have an affair. That was a common thing that men have done. Women have their own, lover provider kind of thing. So that's a major portion of it, I think. I don't know. I think there's something else I was going to say, but I lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It'll come back to me.
Do you have something to say, Avis?
I was going to say, Rob likes to say, be the safe bad boy, right? Like,
Yes.
he offers safety, but he's also out there like taking risks. And yeah, women appreciate that.
Yeah. You got to be both.
To me, it's like the comfort and desire axis. So like, attraction is comfort and desire. And any kind of interaction, you can view it through the lens that it's like you create desire, then you have to create comfort, tension, then trust, tension, then trust, tension, then trust. And it moves in that progression. The escalatory ladder moves in that progression. If you're a nice guy, you're creating too much comfort. If you're like an asshole bad boy, or not enough comfort, too much desire, so to speak. It's hard to say too much desire, but it's like, it's the relative balance between the two of them. And I think, some women at some stages of life, they may prefer like a 2-to-1 comfort to desire ratio versus 2-to-1 desire to comfort. But you're always going to be in that range. And if you can't be somewhere between that 2-to-1 on both sides, ideally closer to 50-50, then you're never going to have you're never going to have a relationship with women that's going to work. Because here's one thing that I think another thing red pill guys miss is, if you don't create any comfort really, but you just have, able to create desire, a woman will sleep with you if she's in the mode for that when you meet her, but she won't want to see you again. She won't want anything. You're kind of like a one and done, or very, and some guys think that that's what they really want, but I'm not sure that most really do want that. I think most want a woman who actually, they conflate that utilitarianism with thinking that the woman's obsessed with them and devoted to them and everything, which is not at all what's going on in that case. The women the men that women love and are super, super devoted to are more in that like 2-to-1 desire comfort ratio, where she feels super safe and trust him, but yeah, he's taking risks. He's able to create tension. He's a real leader. Can't be controlled, but it doesn't like abuse or manipulate either.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it.
Can't be controlled. Is that you?
Ava says that about me all the time.
Unmanageable, but in the best way possible is what
Absolutely.
like you said, can't be controlled, but in a good way.
Yeah. Not in a like a leader way.
Yeah,
So
something I admire, for sure.
Pat, I think we started to kind of go there, but let's talk a little bit about this submission.
Oh
issue
yeah.
Because I know that's been a hot topic, and I've seen you and kind of upsetting some women out there when you're talking about it.
Yeah. So I think so. Yeah, the authority responsibility axis and what that entails, right? And I think a lot of it, there's a misunderstanding of what feminine behavior actually is. I think, you know, a lot of the distortions that you see today is we take all sorts of labels and they invert them. So like a feminine woman is a woman who has, you know, self-respect and is, you know, nobody is going to be able to take advantage of like that. No, wait, hold on a second. Like, I'm not saying that's bad, but that's not feminine. Like, women don't know what it means. Just like in the same way that, well, a leader is a man who does the things that I want, you know. Oh, that's not a leader, you know.
Right.
And so we live in actually in a very, it's kind of this like weird paradox because society's feminized, but it's almost like more appropriate to say it's an inanimated masculine society, like, because everything is very like material right now. Like the energies of both sexes are kind of deflating, and so I'm trying to think of like how to say this without making it sound too like incomprehensible for people, but but basically there is actually a lack of real feminine energy in society. Feminine energy is what animates. Feminine energy, like the masculine maybe creates like structure, but the feminine animates the masculine, propels it forward to build. If you have a society without any feminine energy, it has no reason to move forward. So it, you know, it's kind of like produce for the sake of producing, and aesthetics collapse as that lack of feminine energy goes in there. I think, isn't it very interesting that the rise of feminism, which was designed to destroy feminine energy in society, and that, you know, at the same time that happened, aesthetics started to collapse as well. Isn't that interesting? All the building designs, architecture started to become uglier. And the same people who promote feminism also promoted like postmodern art, like stupid, ugly stuff, bad, you know, everything just got uglier. So we have forgotten and now we almost have no generations left, no people left who were of age before feminism really started to take over consciousness. Like the boomers were the first generation really raised with it, and women accordingly have been, and men frankly too, have been programmed to view submission like it's some sort of weakness, because everything has been framed in masculine terms. The feminists actually were, you know, to talk about like penis envy, like they really had it. Like they really believed that being a woman was a curse and that you should want to be like a man. And when they couldn't compete with men, then they wanted to, you know, castrate men so that men couldn't compete as well with women. And then they start to redefine that a feminine woman is a woman who looks attractive but acts like a man. Submission is what's feminine, but submission is powerful. Submission is belief. Submission is faith. And you can see this religiously speaking, how if you go through the saints and everything, the female saints were always known for their incredible faith or incredible belief. The male saints had that, but they would tend to put themselves out there more in like a, you know, a risky situation to get, you know, like almost like I'm going to step in the firing line. But for the woman, it was less usually proactive action, but more like a strong know in belief. Like they just had this absolute belief that something was going to change, and so miracles would happen around them, right? So within a relationship, the importance of the feminine, we talk about the muse. The muse is a woman who offers a man pure belief. He is inspired by how she is, and, you know, there's some element of that as well, that maybe she's not entirely controlled. Maybe I don't want to like muddy the waters too much, but it's like she favors him, and you can't make a woman submit. A woman chooses to submit. I think that's where a lot of this stuff, like I think a lot of it is just bad faith behavior, frankly, with these women. They don't want to have an honest conversation about it. They're not curious, but they'll always mischaracterize as saying, you just want to control a woman. You just want a woman. I don't want to control a woman. That is not there's no feminine energy that comes from that.
Right.
That is a man wants a woman to voluntarily submit to him. And the reason is because that submission is an act of belief in him, and that animates him to be able to lead and take more action. When a woman nags a man, when a woman tries to tell a man what to do, even if she's correct, frankly, about what to do, the problem is that it affects the man's belief, which causes him to be less animated, which causes his actions to be less impactful. Women don't understand the power of animating a man, or they don't want to do it because they're too arrogant and they think that, you know, it's demeaning for them to do it. But actually, okay, you get everything that you want. You like this is the thing that's so backwards. Like, a lot of them want men to do all these things for them. Men will happily do all these things for them. They'll, if you believe in him, if you truly believe in him, he'll happily do them.
Yeah. You see it a lot. You see young men and they're like, they've started their careers. They're doing great, you know, but they're living in that, like, what do you see, the recliner and the TV and the empty room situation. And then a young woman comes into their life that gives them attention, and they really start, like, he's like, oh, she likes me. She believes in me. And his career a lot of times will just take off because now he's found something that he cherishes worth providing for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think part of the reason that married men do tend to be more successful, at least for a time, is because, you know, they have a woman who they can care for, and eventually children, and children have their own natural feminine energy, right? Like, even if your wife is not as, you know, being as feminine as she could be, right, your children are still going to be looking up, ideally, you know, in most cases, to dad. Like dad's like a superstar, right? It's like that's its own kind of animating energy for a man. And it's part of the reason why I do encourage guys in most situations, like, well, I got to get everything together before. This is actually a really interesting point I want to make. This is important. A lot of guys want to put off getting married or being with a woman because they want to, you know, get their business in the right place. And I'm not saying there aren't contexts where you can't afford the distraction. Like, if you're in like really hard grind mode, 80, 100-hour weeks, early startup, okay, fair enough. But most of these guys, it's like an abstract thing. Like, well, I could make a little bit more money. I could get to this point. And what's interesting is that they really don't get there because they have nothing to animate them. So you see these guys who, like, I just need a few more years to get myself. You're not going anywhere. I pay attention to them because sometimes I'll touch base with them over a number of years and very little's changed. Well, of course it hasn't changed because you're not animated. You have nothing to live for, really. And this is what happens when it comes to personal growth, when the sexes do not have some sort of participating dynamic. The feminine, without the masculine, in self-improvement, so to speak, growth, just runs around in circles. It's a constant chasing of feeling, and it doesn't go anywhere. And, you know, I've seen this in the new age community where, like, women are on like a, you know, I'm healing right now. Yeah, you're healing. Okay, whatever. Like, you're running around in circles over and over again, chasing highs that don't go anywhere because you have no masculine structure to direct your growth. The masculine will say, I have a plan, I have this structure, but they have, without any feminine energy, they just don't move. They have the trajectory, but it's like going like a snail's pace.
Yeah.
And so it's together. When a man and a woman are together, the man creates the structure so the woman grows. That's why you see, like, married women are often so, when they're with a good man, they're so mature, they're so wise, because the man has created the structure to allow her to actually develop as an individual and integrate. And in the same way, the woman provides them animating energy for the man to move forward. But what you see with a single woman, you see like a lot of, you know, otherwise they're just bitter, but they need each other. Men and women need each other.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Submission is a superpower. And, like, I say it all the time. It gives women the ability to relax into their feminine energy, and it's just great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always like to say
All right.
when everybody's playing the roles they were intended to play and they're playing them well, it's like it's working. Everything's clicking. Everything's good. Life is good. You know, it's like when we start deviating outside of that is when we have problems.
And to kind of circle back to the authority responsibility axis, like it's so important to think in those terms, because that is, I think, how you start to break the programming. Because when you get to it, if it's like, women, you have a choice. No one's making you do something. So what do you choose? Do you want to be more respected for your accomplishments and your thinking, or do you want to be cherished for your feelings? Do you want to be cared for? Accordingly, as well, do you want to take on responsibility for things, or do you want to be in charge? And what you usually find that happens, right, is, obviously everyone wants both of the best, but if you say you can only have like one half of this, you're going to get 9 out of 10 women are going to say they prefer to be cherished and they would prefer to not have the responsibility. Like when my wife and I were negotiating this, I told her, like, very, when she was really pressing me on one thing with something, with like a trip, she wanted to do it her way, and I'm like, you know what, like, I'm not doing that. I'm not organizing that. I will happily go on the trip with you, but you have to organize the entire thing. You have to take care of everything. I don't you asked me to plan this trip. I've weighed the different options, and what you're proposing doesn't make sense. There's too many logistical issues, and what I have planned is going to go great. We were having like some friends over. I'm like, this is going to go great. And she was upset because she wanted to go to a different place. I said, go ahead, you set the entire thing up, but I am not taking responsibility for this trip. I'll sit back and chill. And if it, I actually can do a good job with that. I don't need to so much. Like I can be cherished. You know what I mean? Because I'm kind of low maintenance. Like I don't, like, okay, things are a mess. Like I kind of laugh, like if things get messed up. But she didn't want to do that. She didn't want to take, okay, so you have to let go. I've taken, you've submitted your feedback, and I've weighed everything that had to happen. It was a great trip. I'm not saying that I've always do everything perfectly, but the point is that I'm going to bear the responsibility when things go wrong because I planned it. But don't make me, don't plan it and then make me have to, make it happen if I don't think, you know what I mean? That's the big problem. And that's where the resentment in so many marriages come from today. But if you really emphasize that responsibility authority axis, you start to push, I think you can start to push women into their proper role. But men need to do that. Like, never say, we're doing it my way. I say that we'll do it your way, but you have to take full responsibility for it. Oh, okay, maybe I don't want to do that now. I think that's how you get them to back off in most cases.
Well, yeah, and when I'm talking to other women about submission, and we're going through this scenario, like you just said, if your husband takes all the responsibility, so if he plans the trip and it goes poorly, guess what? It's his fault. I said, but on the flip side, if it goes great, that's also his fault, and he needs credit for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
so like you need to be willing to play both sides of the coin. Like, giving up that responsibility of it going wrong and it being your fault also means you give up the responsibility of it going well.
In this whole, and men in particular like women who are easy to please, whether sexually or otherwise, right? And that's because of the belief aspect, right? If a woman is happy based on anything you do, it makes a man feel like he's amazing, and actually a lot of girl game is based around this sort of ego inflation. Like, man, you're just amazing. I can't believe you can do this. Like, guys are like, oh my goodness, and then the woman rug pulls them. But that was actually I think one of my big contributions to the field years ago was girl game. No one was talking about it. They were never not talking about how women, because they were always like, here's how you get a woman. It's like, well, here's how women get you.
Yeah, which is valuable information to understand.
Very important. Yeah. Because it makes a guy feel like his game is great. Girl game makes you feel like your game is amazing. So, big blind spot, the ego blind spot. But yeah, this belief factor, it's really, and and when women step in, like, they want to be cherished, they want to be cared for, but when they, when they don't believe in their man, when they're not grateful, it makes a man not want to care for her. Why would you want to care for something that never gives you positive feedback back?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess maybe as a lead in, and I know we're getting close to the top of the hour here, so we'll try not to belabor this too long. But you do talk about dead bedrooms. Is another topic that I see you talking about here and there, and we kind of have our own spin on it. We talk about this, be your husband's porn star message that gets a lot of women upset. But what is your kind of prescription when this is going on? Like what would you say about these dead bedroom situations, and what are kind of the common things that are happening and ways to resolve them from your point of view?
Well, I think one of the things that I part ways a little bit with the red pill on is their overemphasis on dread game. I think passive dread is obviously good. When I say passive dread, I mean, if you're if you're a friendly guy, you're in great shape, you have that presence and in power, and other women obviously can see that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's only going to, for the most part, give you positive benefits. But if you're actively going out there and talking to other women, flirting with them, disappearing for long stretches of time, out late at night with, that stuff is, I think there's always a time and place for stuff. If you are in a really, like, if your woman is really disrespecting you a lot, and I have to talk about like comfort and desire issues and how they manifest differently, I guess, to really make this clear. When we talked about desire and comfort earlier, when a woman has a desire issue with you, she doesn't actually want to spend time with you. Like, that's how you can diagnose it. Low desire, a woman's off doing her own thing. You are not important. Mm-hmm. Low comfort, she wants your attention and she's creating drama. A lot of guys in the red pill do not understand this distinction. They think that when a woman is, for instance, nagging, or a woman is, trying to make you do this or this or this, they're like, oh, she doesn't desire you. She doesn't respect you. You're just this, beta. It's like, well, actually, she doesn't really have, like, maybe you could be more dominant. Maybe I'm not saying that there isn't another part that contributes, because if you have higher desire, okay, it will, she is going to look up to you more. So you're going to be more attractive overall. But if your main response to a woman who's like kind of nagging you, isn't in the mood, is to then, just start disappearing and talking to other women, you are going to shoot your drama level up in the relationship a ton. And you will probably get more sex in the short term, but you're going to start to really destabilize the relationship, create massive trust issues. The main thing has to do, like, there's boundaries that have to be created, but you don't want to compromise trust in a relationship for long-term benefit. So I think a lot of this like active dread stuff is very short-term, and is only really a nuclear option for a woman who has no time for you at all. So maybe you've been her lapdog for a while, and she just goes off and does her own thing, and all of a sudden you're the one who's not available. All of a sudden you're talking to other women. I get it in that specific context. That is not most marriages. That's not what happens in most marriages. Most marriages, what you're suffering from is really codependency. And so you have to actually like independently break through a lot of these patterns where, and I don't want to squeeze too much in here, because the whole like codependency issue, that's a pretty interesting one, because these couples will get stuck in these loops of like shame, fear, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to own your own emotions and your own part of this and break out of it. And that's going to create more sexual charge on its own, because you're becoming more of individuals again. But I think like the dread game stuff goes too far. The active dread stuff goes too far. And you also have to weigh, like, chore play is bad, but women do, if a woman is totally overworked and stressed, Like, I can tell you with like my wife, if there's a ton going on, she's not getting sleep, she's not going to be really in the mood. She's not going to be in the
Yeah.
mood.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
she's rested and not stressed, she's absolutely going to be in the mood. So I mean, guys have to take that into consideration. It's not like,
I think it's part of being a good leader, right? It's like, your wife, I mean, like I said, we're all about roles, and it's like, your wife needs to own the role that she's in, the same as you need to own the role that you're in. But you, as the leader, owning that leader role, you need to be keeping an eye on your wife. And if she's starting to get overwhelmed because she has too many things on her plate in her role, then you need to solve that somehow, whether or not you're the one stepping in and taking care of it, or you're hiring help to take care of it, whatever it is. And that's not chore play, right? That shouldn't be confused with chore play. That's good leadership. And you're watching out for the people that you're watching out over. And that's very different from a wife, implementing what we would consider true chore play, which is where, hey, if you do the dishes, I'll have sex with you. That's not okay. It's very different from that.
yeah, well said, Rob. I mean, it's a lot of the issues that we talk past each other on in the space is that it's not about the action, it's about the intention behind the action. Are you doing these things because you're hoping to get approval from her? Then you're not in leadership position, you're a nice guy status. But if you're thinking, I'm the leader, how are my people doing? As a man, you really need to be anchored into truth at all times.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a woman really wants to submit to, right? It's a man that's like another one of these chicken egg things that you get into with Christian feminists, that, well, he needs to be a godly man, which of course, the man is supposed to submit to God himself, right? And God's will. But the woman isn't supposed to be the one who determines that. When she's chosen to be with him, when she's decided to marry him, she's breaking her pact at that point.
That's his box.
That's exactly right. And you're supposed to focus on your own roles in the relationship. She's supposed to believe in him, believe in his integrity, believe in him to do the right thing.
Yeah.
That's hard. No one said it was easy. I mean, that well, how am I get these responses from women, like, how am I supposed to trust him to do this? Well, that's the whole difficulty of it, right? How are you as a man, as a leader, you go out and let's say, you're providing, you're taking care of the family the entire time. And how are you supposed to know that if your wife is not on the side doing something else? You know what I mean? Like, leadership is scary too. Taking on all these responsibilities and then you get rug pulled by divorce court. That's a leap of faith.
Yeah.
They're both like these opposite directions in their own way of ego death that end up leading to the same thing, right? They end up ultimately in the same thing, because if you are truly leading, then you've submitted, right? And if you've truly submitted, then you're leading. Because a woman who is truly submitted, she has pure faith, pure belief. She's actually directing, in some sense, where things go, because she's manifesting it. It's manifestation.
Sure. Like I said, it's a superpower, right? If I'm doing my job of submitting, then my life is going to go how I see it going, basically, because I've picked a man that is a good leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We just do what we can with our, no one's perfect.
Sure. No one's perfect.
If we aspire towards it, you start to get a good relationship. And that polarity in itself creates good stuff in the bedroom, right? That's a lot of the issues with sex, is because there's no polarity. And polarity is the benchmark of sexual attraction. One thing that I think it's been so hard for people to get married today, notwithstanding all the other issues, and the lack of trust, although they're connected, right? But notwithstanding all that, one of the really major issues is that in the past, it was easier to find somebody because you weren't putting all of the weight of a relationship success on personality. Like right now, it's like, well, we're kind of in the same class and we, social class, we kind of like the same things. We get along well, there's like personality chemistry, right? But there's not necessarily consistently this like natural sexual polarity. Everybody during the courtship phase like emphasizes that stuff, like it's like an unconscious thing. Even people who have no game, even people who insist that they're, you know, neither feminine nor masculine, I pay attention to it all the time. You'll see even like the most effeminate kind of guy will become a little bit more masculine during the courtship and vice versa with the woman. But leaning into these roles, when you had men and women with these roles, it was much easier to feel attraction. It creates like a very strong foundation in the relationship. And then, you know, the stuff like the personality, everything else, that just enriches it further. But now there's like a lot of stress on, you know, our personalities to carry things. And that's when you start to get more into like this codependency stuff, because we're too, you know, people are not owning their dimension of the relationship. And so things start to blur together. Everything becomes too familiar to enmeshed. And that's not sexy. It's too familiar. And so people say that they grow apart. They're not attracted to each other anymore. But if you had the polarity, you'd still be attracted, you know, because he'd still feel like a man in the relationship. She'd still feel like a woman.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of great insight and wisdom, which is kind of how I started this podcast with you, kind of saying that's how I felt about you, and I think you just proved it. You know, it's. I think people will be wise to kind of listen to a lot of things you're saying. So Pat, we're pretty much we're a little bit past an hour here, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. But you know, let me just quickly ask you, because we didn't really get into this. I mean, what are you doing? You're coaching men and women on dating and marriage and those sorts of things. Like, what are the services and the kind of things that you're doing, and how do people get in touch with you? How do they like the things they hear you're saying? You know, how do they make use of that with you?
That's a great question. So, and it's I like the way that you phrased it too, because like, what are you doing? Because my business partner, Will, when I was in prison, he actually asked me that. What are you doing with men? Like, how do you do this? And I was like, I don't even know. I don't know. I don't know how I do it. But fortunately, in prison, you have a lot of time to think. And so I went and I sort of broke down, okay, what is it? Because I work with guys through the full cycle of their dating lives. And while I do work with guys, like there's the inner issues, and then there's sort of like consciousness, lifestyle shifts, right? Changing perspective. But specifically with women, there's like 3 types of guys that I work with. And you have the ones that you would think, right? Meeting and attracting women, that's the problem. They got to get out there, they got to find women, and they got to be able to create attraction with them. And then you have guys, this is a smaller number, but significant still, of guys who maybe don't have a hard time attracting women, but they have a hard time getting like either relationship quality women or making that step into a relationship, or the woman leaves them right before that. It's like the transition issue. They have a hard time vetting and choosing. And then you have the guys who are in serious relationships or marriages, and they're either going through some of this like dead bedroom or fighting, things are falling apart, and those guys need to try to keep their relationship or deepen it. So I realized in prison that, you know, there is this sort of like spectrum of stuff that I work on with guys, and it all builds on itself. And that I also, every problem that guys have with women is either put into 3 categories. So it's either that they are not confronting their fear. So fear is holding them back from, whether it's rejection from a woman, whether it's being more open within their relationship, or whether it's taking the step into commitment itself, right? There's always like a fear that needs to be confronted, or it's a lack of awareness. So awareness of themselves, awareness of how women work, awareness of the environment. But then there's that third piece, right, which we talked about earlier in the show, the good faith. Are you operating in good faith, or you're operating in bad faith? Because if you can be brave and go and talk to women, and you can understand women, but you can have bad faith intentions, you're not going to be able to create good relationships with them if that's the case. And unfortunately, a lot of game advice really veers into that dark triad sort of category. So I realized it's like, okay, so like I'm trying to create dynamic men, right? That's the name of my business, The Dynamic Man. And it's always going to be one of these 3 skills: conquering fear, expanding awareness, operating in good faith. And then you have it across the entire spectrum, whether it's like the internal work, like it's even operating in good faith with yourself, whether it's meeting, attracting women, vetting and choosing, keeping and deepening. So I have a course, and then, there's the lifestyle, like living as a dynamic man. So my course, the Dynamic Man Masterclass, it's like over 40 hours long, covers all of this stuff. And my clients are going to also fall into one of those categories. So the course is like a good way. There's a lot of self-coaching elements into it. And it also reinforces a lot of what I work on with clients. But yeah, I worked with like over 350 guys personally. At this point, I've got like 65 marriages under my belt from guys that I started working with.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it's
nice.
That's good stuff. But yeah,
it's good stuff.
I'm on X. Pat,
is that the best way for people to find you and get in touch with you? And
it's probably the easiest. I mean, I have my email list. I send out emails pretty much every day. That's PatStedman.com/opt-in or sign up. Either one works. Get you on there. You get a free copy of my book, 3 Pillars of Attraction. And actually this spring I have my book, Letters from Fort Dix, coming out. So that's going to be on that whole J6 experience. If that's your thing, that's going to be exciting. But yeah,
I'll probably give that one a read. Is it going to be an audiobook? I usually do audiobooks. I don't know.
I mean, I think I'll do an audiobook. Probably not for immediate release audio. Yeah. I'll probably get to it though.
Yeah. I'm not a big reader, but I do like to listen to audiobooks when I'm in the gym and so forth. It's a good way to consume them and kind of multitask. Well, Pat, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great conversation. We really enjoyed it. And, I'm sure most of the people that are listening to this are probably already following you, but hey, if you happen to be and you're not following Pat, make sure you give him a follow. And like I said, he's got a lot of insight and wisdom to share with the world, and we want to help him spread that message. So, Pat, thank you so much again for your time. And we'll see everybody on the next one.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It was a great show. Appreciate it.
Yep, very much. Thank you. See ya. Bye.